What a week it has been. California is shrouded in smoke, I got a rug delivered, and Xbox has finally announced their much-leaked next-gen little brother console, the Xbox Series S. This is important because for all the talk of performance and power, the future of the console wars will be mid-range. I'm Conor, and this is Insight Gaming.
We gon' party, hey, hey. We gon' party.
Every week on this show, we'll dive into a new topic and think some thoughts. Thoughts we would have thunk anyway, but now under a dumb, clever name. And we're gonna hear from all the folks here on IG, so look out for that on Sundays. Same great taste, new packaging. Okay, so the smallest Xbox ever is launching alongside the Series X on November 10th for $299. It feels so strange to be working with all the information regarding a new console. We've been clinging to speculation and the tiniest morsels of information for months now. So to get the prices and a release date just feels like, I don't know, I feel like I'm spoiled. I feel like I'm going to be caught. And I know the Series S is technically not mid-range because it's the lesser of only two consoles, but let's assume it's the middle ground between buying an Xbox Series X and not buying a console at all. Anyway, the little console that could boasts not insignificant specs for the price point. It plays games at 1440p up to 120 frames per second and has built-in ray tracing, 4K upscaling for games, and 4K media streaming along with some other bits and pieces. It's got some goodies. And though it's the smallest Xbox ever made, it's important to note that unlike the slim PS4s of the world, the Xbox Series X is not a bridge console. Sorry, Sam. But that brings us to a more difficult question to answer, which is, what makes the Series S next gen? Conceivably, the promise of a new console generation is increased power. Every 4 to 5 years, companies release a new box that's the most powerful, the highest fidelity, the sleekest whatever, and Microsoft is doing that. Phil Spencer has personally taken every opportunity to point out that actually the Xbox Series X is more powerful than the PS5. But while they've been engaging in this very public teraflop measuring contest, the boys in the lab down at Microsoft have been cooking up a quite different approach to the coming generation. The mid-range Xbox Lite. Same games, fewer calories. Kind of already made that joke earlier in this video. Whatever. We're just having fun. We're just playing jazz here. We're throwing spaghetti at the wall. The Xbox Series X is immediately positioned as less powerful than the Series X, which checks out. It's supposed to be the more affordable buy-in to the ecosystem Microsoft has been building. It plays into the larger strategy we've seen unfold from them over the recent months. The company has made strides in erasing the boundaries between each era of Xbox. They blow Sony out of the water in terms of backwards compatibility and have made an uncanny commitment to forwards compatibility. The Xbox games promise makes the hardware secondary to the software. First-party games will not be exclusive to the series of consoles, at least in the short term, meaning that first-party games will continue to release for the Xbox One consoles for the foreseeable future. We're going to try to divine an answer to the question, what makes the Series S next gen, by looking backwards at the tail end of the previous generation of consoles, at the Xbox One X. So the two consoles share an interesting relationship in an ecosystem where the lines between generations have been blurred, and performance-wise, the Series X seems to stray closer to the One X than it does to the Series X in a lot of ways. I don't know, it's a little muddy. Also, these naming conventions are impossible. Bear with me, bear with us, bear with the entire games media, because this is just gonna be our lives until the Xbox One is put to rest. It's difficult to say whether the Series X is more or less powerful than the previously most powerful console ever made. Do you remember the shirts that they gave people at E3 when they announced it? They all said, "I witnessed the reveal of the most powerful console ever made," or something along those lines. Very silly, very dumb, very Microsoft. I realize the Series S likely boasts a new system architecture and minor fixes and updates and whatever and so on and so forth, but let's look at the surface level stuff. One, because I'm dumb. And two, the messaging around these consoles is key for the casual consumer. People aren't going to be looking deep into the specs. They want to know why they should buy this over a different console. The new Series S is incapable of true 4K gameplay. It can upscale, but it doesn't play at 4K. But it does ray trace, whereas the Xbox One X mirrors these features. No ray tracing, they do have 4K gameplay. Does that mean ray tracing is more indicative of a next-gen experience than 4K? Maybe. However, according to Vice Games, multiple developers have vouched for the new console's power, the Series S specifically. The Series S also has no disk drive, meaning we might as well add digital titles as a key component of a next-generation console. There's an Xbox One that has no disk drive, it's all digital, but that's certainly not next-gen, so maybe we don't add that to the list. The Xbox Series S is next-gen, and the One X is last-gen because Microsoft says so, and I'm inclined to trust them on this, but what signifies next gen is far muddier these days. I'm assuming there will also be some sort of consistency in UI and experience between the Series X and the Series S, but also we saw the Xbox One's UI go through significant shifts in its lifetime, so is that a signifier? I don't know. A 512 gig SSD though, that's not next gen. I don't care how fast the drive is, that sucks. That is way too small. That is too small for 5 years ago. Regardless, the Series S proximity to the One X in terms of specs, holy shit, explains why the older machine has been all but pulled from shelves. Of course, the Xbox Series X has all these features and more, but there isn't any question regarding that console's next-gen cred. However, the Series S could have interesting ramifications for an emerging premium console market. The clear lines in the sand between console generations was, compared to other tech these days, a privilege, and the loss of them was inevitable. The Xbox Series S release reminds me specifically of the smartphone market and the proliferation of the mid-range budget phone. Calling something that costs $500 budget is such a startling sentiment, but I guess it's all relative. I don't know, tech is expensive. But in recent years, the mid-range smartphone category has flourished, spawning phones like the iPhone XR, the Samsung A phones, the Google Pixel lowercase a series of phones, and almost everything Motorola makes these days. Boom, roasted, we gotcha. A few years back, opting for a cheaper handset made for a significant series of compromises in performance, build, and overall quality. Fortunately, diminishing returns with each update in smartphone generations has allowed for cheaper models to gain a foothold, because phones are expensive, often prohibitively so, especially if you're buying them up front, and the average consumer will gladly forego a state-of-the-art chip, or wireless charging, or a metal and glass body in exchange for an affordable phone that still does all the same things as the more expensive versions, pretty much just as well at a fraction of the cost. Xbox is clearly aiming for a similar audience with this new Series S announcement, because not everybody has a 4K TV, and not everyone needs an imperceptibly higher FPS. Most people just want a way to play games and will likely not even blink at the compromises when the price tag is so comparatively low. This will help Microsoft in a few ways as I see it. One, it'll bring in revenue, pretty clear benefit. Two, an agreeably priced next-gen console is going to get a lot of folks in the Xbox ecosystem playing Game Pass, which somehow continues to get even better as the days go by, and then maybe spreading out to xCloud or whatever else they implement next. And third, the existence of the mid-range console supports the production of high-end machines for the people who want them. For all their talk of backwards compatibility and investing in services, Microsoft is still f***ing stoked on making a super powerful box that's more powerful than any box that's ever come out before. And powerful boxes rule. We love powerful boxes. We love to see a box with a lot of power. Raising the bar on what consoles are capable of will raise the bar for all of gaming, since most developers make games for the largest audience possible. If a significant base of consumers can be counted on to purchase consoles like the Series S moving forwards, that could feasibly give Microsoft a little more wiggle room to create the premium consoles for people who want them. I'd like to see what they, and Sony for that matter, can do if they're not so worried about the bottom line. All kinds of weird stuff is happening in the phone space, I mean, with folding devices and pop-up cameras. Let's get weird! Don't fold your Xbox. It will break it. I mean, Nintendo's doing it constantly, and occasionally, yes, you'll end up with a Wii U, but the results are always interesting. And Sony is sticking with the one premium machine and making, hopefully, great games for exclusively that machine, but if the Series S is a runaway success, then perhaps, maybe, Sony will try to emulate that and bolster the budget console trend. We could be looking at a shift in the way consoles, and by extension console generations, are made, marketed, and integrated upon. Because just like phones, the improvements in power are growing smaller with every new generation, and the companies are going to have to adapt. Anyway, tune back in next week for another thrilling episode of Insight Gaming. Isn't that fun? Isn't that a great name? Oh, man. Well, that's it.
After Sony and Microsoft have waited an inordinate amount of time to release important details about their next-gen consoles, Microsoft finally bit the bullet. They went first. They announced this morning that the Xbox Series X and its little brother, the less powerful and smaller, but still, you know what? Its mom still loves it. The Xbox Series S will release